All right. So, welcome to episode 254 of the Artcasters. I can't believe we're this far in and still chugging. It's kind of awesome. As usual, we'll make the rounds, announce who everybody is. We have a special guest too, which is pretty cool. So we'll start it off. So I'm Josh McKimble. You know where to find me. You're on my YouTube channel. So if you haven't yet, hit the like, hit that subscribe, and hit that bell so that you can be notified when we're about to go live. And then other than that, just go to right now. I'm going to be pushing this pretty hard, but go to quarterlystories.com. And pretty soon there will be a link to my story about faith and mental illness that I hand wrote, hand lettered, and hand inked, and it should be up there shortly once I receive a pre-order link. But I have the hard copy of the book, so I'll be showing a little bit of that off today. Yeah. And Scott, where can everybody find your work?
You can find me, let me pull this up, at circworks.com. And on that page, if you go to circworks.com, I'm going to just try to promote these. We're getting closer to holiday season. I've got a whole bunch of workbooks for making comics, making manga. This one's got word balloons and everything that you could fill in. It's also got panels, and I've got some with sound effects. I've got tons of different ones, but there's a link on my website that'll take you to Amazon where you can get these. So if you got Amazon Prime, they make good stocking stuffers. So start thinking about that. And then other than that, just on my YouTube channel, I've got a series called Making Comics 101. I've been doing live versions. So the last one I did was a pretty good episode. I answered a lot of interesting questions, some that I've never even got, some that I get all the time, but some that I've never got before. So it's kind of interesting. So you can check into that and learn some stuff about making comics. And then that's part of a whole series, Making Comics 101, where I basically take you step by step how to make comics, the whole process. So check that out on YouTube.
Sweet. And we've just been joined by Gary in the chats, who also should just mention, has a lovely book that I just got and read and love.
I'm on right here, right by my desk.
Yeah, so if you guys haven't read that, check it out. It's really good. It's also kind of
here.
Yeah, it's mind blowing too, because it's it's close to 60 pages. I think he knocked out in a year or two, which is
the second one's quite a bit bigger than the first one actually.
Yeah, but it's definitely a good read. So yeah, nice to join us, Gary Keeman in the chats as well. And then all right, we're joined by special guest Cory Kerr, my good buddy. So Cory, where can everybody find your work? And most importantly, where can they watch your upcoming interview? Right?
Yeah. So you can find my stuff at corykerr.com. And if you go to corykerr.com/online, then you will see, I guess I'll leave that up for a couple more seconds. Then you'll see a link that looks like this.
Yeah.
And I'm interviewing Sean Crystal tomorrow on my YouTube channel. So tomorrow afternoon, 2:30 Mountain Time. So 1:30 California time. And I'm super excited about it. But he'll be live, and he seems like a super cool guy. So
that's rad. And Sean is incredible. And actually, Cory, you turned me on to his podcast, the Ink Pulp audio, and it's so good. And he's a really good, thorough resource for comics and just comics know-how. And he knows a lot of people in the industry too. Has really great interviews. So I'm excited to check that out tomorrow. That'll be cool.
Yeah, it'll be great, and he's got a couple things to promote. So if you're interested in getting really good at comics, tune in tomorrow because we'll be talking about a lot of the stuff he's doing.
That's exciting. All right, cool. And then we got Squatchy in the chats joining us as well. Hey, Squatchy, what's up? Yeah. So today, I selfishly wanted the topic to be troubleshooting marketing ideas, and also just kind of a more casual kind of roundtable And I also thought I'd show a sneak peek of my graphic novel from Marcosia Press, which I got a copy of. So it's like a soft touch cover and softback, and printing came out really cool. Like, the reason I do those pages all huge is because, like, when it's reduced down, it looks super crisp and kind of crazy detailed. So it's my cheating way of making things look way more detailed and tight than they actually are. But it looks really cool at scale. Like, it's a fun read, and this is the way it's intended to be read. So I'm glad I finally have it in a book form. Like,
what you got to say the line now that you actually got it.
Yeah, that's true.
Your little pitch.
I will hand this to you in print now. When I hand lettered, hand inked, and hand whatever. Yeah, I'll be handing it to you soon. But yeah,
he's going to personally deliver it to everyone that orders one.
That would be cool. I'm not sure if that'll be possible. But yeah, so I was so stoked on just like how nice it is to kind of be able to sit and read this thing, this book that I've dedicated a ton of time to, and like it's just really exciting, like, to see.
Why are we not showing you full screen? We should show you. How do we do that?
True.
How do we do that? There we go. Okay, there we go.
So it's kind of a neat. I'll just give like a little teaser real quick before we get into the topic. But like, pages like this, when you see them like twice the size of my head, it's not quite as cool as like seeing them like there where you can see all the detail. But it's like, clearly, I don't know. It's just really cool to see everything sequenced in the way I planned it and stuff. So, and what's weird is I did the math and I realized I started this thing like 8 years ago, and then took like a 3 or 4 year break when my son was first born, and then like kind of cranked through the majority of the rest of it like around the same time I started doing Artcasters with like Scott. And so like what I'm hoping to do with the second is reduce that time and probably try to get it done in about a year to a year and a half.
So how I guess I never asked you how you plan to do that.
So
it seems like it's not like you were slacking on that first book.
He's going to reduce it the same way he reduced the pages.
Yeah.
It just works.
Yeah, that's exactly how. I think it's because I have a better plan of a workflow. It's also like there were things I was doing in the process for this book that I think might have like kept my interest, but also slowed me down. Like I had a plot arc written, but I didn't have the full manuscript for every chapter. So I would like have to do task switching, like whenever I completed a chapter, and like write out the next chapter. Actually, this was one I was really happy with. Like,
wow.
It just works as a spread really cool.
Yeah, it's nice.
So,
I can't wait to get that.
Yeah, and I mean, like I think that, like, it should be pretty cool for people to kind of read and check out, and like the nice thing is like it actually gives you a window into like this crazy thing I've dedicated years to, But what's neat is like seeing it like this also gives me extra juice to like really want to get the second book out, because it's a full story arc. But I do think it's going to reduce the time involved in getting it knocked out. It'll basically reduce it by having like a script, like the script I already have done for the whole next book. So it's not like I'm going to have to pause and do scripts. And then I'm thumbnailing the entire book first. And then I'm going to do, I'll probably do like chapter by chapter after that. But I think by having all of that pre-work done earlier. It's kind of like Cory talked about when he was first doing animations, where you would kind of sort of do the process, but you wouldn't go through the full like animatic at the beginning. And then you were like, that kind of slows me down in the long run. So like, what's weird is you end up arriving at more kind of traditional ways of doing it. So that's my game plan, is to try to kind of do that. The other thing that's nice is my son's a lot older now, so my windows to work are a little wider than they were when I was kind of like early on this. Not to give it excuses or whatever, but yeah. So we'll see. I mean, that's the goal. Luckily, it's an indie publisher, so they're pretty flexible with the deadline. But you know, I still would want to honor it, especially for people who like pick up the book and stuff. So, but my hope is, I mean, ideally, it'd be cool to have the whole thing thumbnail like by the time the book like actually hits the market. I sincerely doubt I'll get there though, but that's kind of what I'm aiming for. We'll see how that goes. So, yeah,
That's cool, man.
yeah. So one of the things I kind of wanted to talk about though is like, so there's a couple things that have kind of come up through this. One is like, I'm gonna need to market the crap out of this. And I have a few rough ideas for marketing, but it's an interesting era in time where a lot of the marketing tools are pretty limited since you can't do a lot of in-person as much as you could, like kind of pre-COVID. So what's interesting is like I'm starting to think about things that I want to do on my own, as well as whatever my publisher does, just to kind of try to help the book succeed as much as it possibly can. Because I've just, you know, I've done illustration and stuff for people for so long that I've definitely illustrated books like for pretty big publishers that have just not sold at all. And keep in mind, they were like work for hire, so I wasn't like necessarily promoting them hard. I'd just be like, hey, I illustrated this book, you know, like, but when you get like a percentage of the royalties for the book, you know, it's a little bit of a different incentive. And so what I'm trying to figure out is like methods and ideas for like marketing, and also like find out like suggestions for like podcasts or websites or anything like that you guys might have, people in the chats might have, to try to kind of give this book like the best shot at succeeding. And then I also want to give a qualifier that all of the people who listen to the Artcasters are probably going to get very tired of hearing about this book for the next month or two. But I'm going to be pushing it pretty hard. So anyhow, so that's kind of my rough quandary, and kind of why I wanted to, like, one of the main reasons, aside from the fact that it's just fun to talk to Cory, and Cory, you're a brilliant artist, so there's that too. But it's like, I also like want to kind of troubleshoot some marketing thoughts and kind of see what maybe you guys might have to say or recommend for like trying to push and market this book. I mean, my short-term thought is like to kind of treat it like a Kickstarter, like the second I have that pre-order information. But even in that case, like if I were going to run a Kickstarter, I'd still want advice from you guys. So yeah, so that's kind of roughly, I don't know if that makes sense, the way I framed it, but that's roughly what I thought the conversation could be. And I thought it could be a good example for anybody who like is going into a project to realize, like, you know, like once the project's kickstarted or published or whatever, it's not necessarily the end of the job. Like the work really, you know, there's a lot of work to like promoting these things and stuff too. So, yeah.
Well, the one thing that I'd say that I've heard quite a bit is that, you know, you think you're bombarding people with all these, you know, promotions, and you think you're being spammy, when in fact most of the time people aren't going to see all your stuff. Anyone that's run a Kickstarter, I've heard that, they think they're putting too much stuff out there, and then you get all these people that are like, oh man, I didn't even know you were doing a Kickstarter. I wish I would have known. So I wouldn't worry too much about that. And most people, I'm not going to be offended if I see a bunch of stuff, because I want to get the book myself. So but I was curious, when you say kind of going sort of doing kind of a Kickstarter, what do you mean by that? Because obviously you got a publisher and everything, but usually when you do sort of run like a Kickstarter, it's a good way to drum up interest and things like that. So I guess it's just a matter of you doing some of the same, advertising tactics you would if you were running a Kickstarter, but direct it to where they can buy the book.
Yeah, because the way that and I might be over cautious or whatever, but it's like I said, I've had plenty of moments of like having books out with publishers that haven't like sold terribly well, and then I've had books that have sold pretty well, and I definitely would say like the book just being out with a publisher doesn't kind of take away that kind of ramp up that's necessary. And so in this case, because there's a pre-order, I would almost personally want to treat the pre-order as though it were a Kickstarter, like hypothetically, like just the approach to marketing it, because that pre-order date is pretty important, because the second that pre-order date goes from pre-order to order, like that affects all the rankings on like Amazon and the other sites that it's for sale, and then that also affects whether retailers kind of get into it, and also it affects that whole buzz of like new books versus old books. People are so obsessed with new things that if something's kind of sat on the market for a while without moving, it tends to not send like the best message. So that's kind of what I mean. Not that like obviously I'll be marketing the hell out of this book till the second one's out, but what I'm thinking is like just kind of, I guess why I mentioned Kickstarter is that's kind of a marketing tactic that we're all pretty familiar with recently.
Yeah.
and might be a good starting point is like what kinds of approaches do you guys take to kind of ramping things up? Have there been like surefire ways to to kind of drum up like interest and support for those endeavors and stuff,
Well, the first thing I would say, a couple things. First, I want to say, I'm curious, like, is there a particular place that you want people to purchase your book from that's going to help you as far as that pre-order goes? Does it make sense to order it through my local comic shop that would order from Diamond? Does it make more sense to order through Marcosia, through Amazon? Or if any order, does it get back to the powers that be and they can see that it's, it's a sale type thing? Or
so ideally, I would like so maybe I can spitball and share some of the ideas I have, and then you guys can kind of help me out on them. But like one of the ideas I have is as generic as it is, I have an old email list that I haven't really kind of hit in a long time. I'm going to revive that for sure, to send out an email, just kind of like an email blast, like letting people know and seeing if some of those old contacts, like for some reason, and keep in mind, it's been like, it's close to a decade ago when I was using that email list. So a lot of that is probably not super up to date. But the advantage of that, if any of those contacts are still there, I did used to have like an in where I could put out an email blast and somehow it would end up on Newsarama. And I don't know if that still exists, but that and Comic Book Resources used to be kind of connected somehow to my emailing list. And and so obviously if I can, use that like an email blast to kind of make that like I'm going to try that. As weird as it is, like if I were doing a Kickstarter, I'd probably do this. Everyone I know who's done a Kickstarter has done this. But I'm probably also going to go through my entire contact list on Facebook and message each person individually, not spam them, but message them individually, let them know about the book, ask them to repost, share, and if they have a local comic shop, to go to that shop or a local bookstore and request that it be ordered. So that'll be like one of the other little pillars. My other idea is to actually reach out to as many comic shops in California as I can. California is a huge chunk of the market, so it's kind of advantageous that I live in California for this kind of thing. But to kind of reach out and encourage them to pre-order, probably send them an ebook. I need to get that worked out with my publisher, but I'm pretty sure they'll be okay with me sending kind of a sample to retailers and to I don't know if they're going to want to eat the cost of a physical sample, but I definitely think an ebook for that and for like local papers would be good, with like maybe a press release for, obviously like no local newspapers and things like that. But when it comes to like retailers, I think actually like the more human touch of like actually just calling and saying like, hey, I'm a local artist. There's a book coming out through Marcosia. They're carried through Ingram. You can order the book. If you order, copies, I'd be more than happy to come to your store and sign or do whatever I can to kind of help promote it and move it at your store and bring your store some revenue, as well as, promote my book. And so I think those things are all kind of just things that I'm batting around for immediate. In the immediate, I do have a feeling like by just kind of hitting even Facebook, if I get like, a lot of my friends to actually get kind of motivated on it, I think I could get a lot of traction just from that alone. And then, I mean, that's kind of all I've got on my plate. As for like podcasts and stuff that I'd like to reach out to or be available for, that's where like my knowledge base is just really slim, because most of the podcasts I listen to are like comedy podcasts and like news podcasts and stuff. I don't listen to a ton of like art related content on podcasts other than like the shows in our immediate circle, on YouTube. I don't do a ton of like listening to art shows. And so that's like an area that, and basically like just even on like that, when I'm reaching out to different publications or stores or anything like that, like if you guys have any ideas on like what, if there are specific ones or any tips or anything I'm not including in this idea.
What I would suggest too is, I mean, we've had a lot of guests on the Artcasters. Some of those guests, have channels and things like that.
Yeah.
I know Jeff's in the chat. He's got a pretty large channel. Like Dan Ekus, maybe reach out to him. I know sometimes he'll do interviews, and
yeah.
And we've had him on the show, and he's sent people to Artcasters and asked if, we could help promote their book. So I'm sure he's open to that. We've had a number of people. So, yeah. And then, Gary kind of just echoes that thought right there.
Yeah.
So, but yeah, we've had a number of people. So I would, definitely don't just limit it to podcasts, but there's a lot of stuff on YouTube. And then I'm trying to think what else. As far as podcasts I'm listening to, the art podcasts, I'm trying to think if there are any that actually do that kind of thing. I mean, I listen to like Comics Lab, but they don't really do anything like that. So yeah, I don't know. There's not a whole lot of the art podcasts I listen to. I don't know that they do interviews or kind of that type of thing, but I know there's a lot of that on YouTube. I still, because we've also talked about how your book you kind of have to have a unique approach just because of the content of the book.
Yeah.
One, because it deals, I mean, you've talked about this before, how it deals with religion. It also deals with suicide and depression and things like that, and sometimes those two don't jive. But I don't know, because I mean, have you thought about any kind of like suicide prevention groups, things like that? Do you think that could be something that could help, that they that would, obviously you don't want to approach it like I'm trying to promote this thing. You want to promote it as this, this could help you, or, this, I don't know, like even like therapists, things like that,
Yeah.
So there are a lot of influencers inside of that space of mental health awareness and suicide prevention and things like that. Like I'm thinking of Anna Akana, is a YouTuber who would be great. She's, I believe her sister killed herself. Anyway, she's awesome, and she's very much about mental health awareness and things like that. And then I think, like Milana, what is her last name?
Melania Trump? No, I'm just I'm just throwing it out.
I'm sure she would do it. It's the AT&T lady. What is her name? Anyway, but she's doing lots of like Instagram live interviews with people on different topics and things like that. So I think like that type of thing would be interesting, but I would go bigger, and I would find any journalist who is out there that is writing on the topic of mental health awareness. And I think it's a hot topic right now because there are a lot of people very concerned about how much loneliness is killing people.
Yeah.
And so we've almost traded with the lockdown pandemic, we've traded one health crisis for another health crisis. And so we've taken people who might not have struggled with loneliness and suicidal thoughts, and we've locked them in their houses without the ability to connect with other people. And so we're seeing a rise in difficulties in that, and it's been reported on a lot.
Yeah.
And so you could just approach the editors and the journalists that are writing those types of stories, and I would approach them with a press release. And so you'd write that AP journalistic style, inverted pyramid, with images, with that's who I'm thinking of. Vaintrub. I don't know how to pronounce your last name, but Milana Vaintrub, Gary was pointing her out. But you'd write that inverted pyramid as if it was a story that's already been written, with pull quotes from you, and maybe I would find people that book. You've mentioned that there have been people that book has touched them, maybe saved them, maybe helped them. I would find those people, and I would get video interviews with them. I'd get audio clips from them. I would get pull quotes from them, and I would include all of that in a press packet to be able to release, because the idea of the book, hey, a new comic book came out. Okay, so that happens every Wednesday, right? Yeah. But yours is part of the current zeitgeist of mental health awareness. And so the angle that you would take with the huge outlets would not be, a new comic book came out, but a new comic book is coming out in print that has saved people's lives, because it's about suicide awareness, and it's about, it's a very real thing. And then I would aim for the fences, right? I'd send it to Ellen. I'd send it to the Today Show. I'd send
NPR.
it to NPR. Anyone who talks about anything along those lines. And I mean, a quick email that just says, hey, appreciate your show. I've noticed that you wrote an article about, this, blah, 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 blah. So you're going to do a lot of reading. Mention a quick thing about that article. Just say, I'm releasing a book that's very personal to me, and I felt like you would appreciate it based on these 3 stories that you wrote, which I enjoyed for the following reasons. And then then say, just attach a link to the press packet. And in that press packet, you have all of the media that they would need to do any type of audio, visual, or written content. And so you get all the pull quotes, you get all the video, clips, you get all the B-roll stuff, you get all the, have some footage of you inking some of those pages so that they can throw that over the top of a news anchor talking about the story. All of that type of stuff. So just think of anything that somebody might edit together, and you include that in this big giant thing. I would probably upload that as a link, like a Dropbox or a Google Drive or something, so that, because people get frustrated when you clog their inboxes with lots of things. And so I would just say, I'd be happy to email it to you, or you can click this link. Let me know how you'd like me to get it to you, or what you need, for that type of thing. Because as soon as you get any single influencer or major gatekeeping journalist to touch it, then you'd be good. So I'd hit the New Yorker, the Atlantic, New York Times, any of the stuff like that. I would hit. I'd hit Psychology Today. I'd hit any of the trade magazines within psychology. I would also hit any academic magazines. See who's published about this recently, and see if you can get some like known professors on board. So if there's people that are doing clinical psychology or psychological experimental psychology research, there might be people out there that are using like art therapy, or that are using literary therapy or something like that, and it might be interesting for them to say, I'd like to try this in a test case. And then you've got a news story where, hey, so-and-so professor from such and such known college is running a study with this comic book that might save lives. So anything that you can get either in the academic and the journalism or in the social media space, influences in any of those areas, I would hit that. And then I would go government lobbyists. Anyone who is trying to pass legislation in Congress or in the House or anything on mental health, anybody that's trying to push for greater coverage or spending in that category might be interested in it, and they might be able to connect you with some of the people that you have blind spots on. And so try to see who's writing bills around this issue, and I would approach them, approach their press secretaries, approach them as well, and just say, hey, I feel strongly about this too. Here's a press packet. Yeah. So those just off the top of my head, I think I covered every organization available. Because you've got government, you've got journalism, you've got education. So now the other thing is if you can just get the capitalists on board. So if there are businesses out there, well, frankly, this would be really an interesting thing. Big Pharma isn't doing so well on the PR front lately. So try to find people in Big Pharma that might be doing good work rather than trying to take advantage of people. Because there's good and bad and everywhere, and see if there's some sort of partnership or co-op or event or something that they might be interested in, because they are looking, I would imagine, for any good PR that they could get. And so let's see. I'm trying to think of who else would be involved in that. Sorry, go ahead.
I was just going to say, Jen says that she's got a few leads that way, and she's got she's published a similar book where it's religious, but it's also something that a lot of probably religious institutions wouldn't touch, and she's done good marketing that too. So,
yeah,
it's awesome. The interesting thing too is like having done this before, because that sounds like a lot, but actually if it's good, because the way that I've experienced this is like you kind of do aim for the fences, and the era that I was doing this, like you had to like send physical mailers, so you print up like a really fancy looking postcard that's like one of the oversized ones, which used to be really expensive, with like pretty much the copy for a magazine article like on the back of it. That was very beautifully written so that like basically you could spare the journalist having to do their job, because they can just copy and paste, like, or at the time like retype what you wrote and basically say, hey, here's an article, and it saves them something they have to write, and it gives you the advantage of like kind of controlling the press over it. And all it takes is like a few papers to pick it up, and then other papers kind of see it. If it ends up in the AP, then you're really good, because it's like it ends up in that running cycle. And so like what you're actually suggesting is really good, because like even if I do, dedicate time to carving at the little that I can, it's still going to make a lot of progress, as opposed to just kind of blindly kind of trying to or blanket trying to target everything. So I mean, obviously I think for me, realistically, I'm going to start organically with the connections I already have. That's of course where I'm going to start, because that's a pretty straightforward thing. But I like the idea of building like a promo packet, building having them all available on a website to link. That also will spare, like, if it does start getting picked up, having to kind of rifle through all my stuff and send a bunch of stuff over email. It is a lot more convenient to just be like, hey, here's a press release, here's all the photos you can use, here's all the illustrations you can use, here's video footage, all of that. So whatever you need is there. That's a really good idea. And then I love the idea of really targeting mental health institutions. I definitely don't want to market it as a solution to mental health, but I do think part of why I wrote about mental health is like the lack of people talking about hard issues in mental illness. And like, I think that in itself can be really alienating and like hurt people, because there's such a kind of taboo around it. And actually, Cory, that's a good point, that like right now that might be a really important thing to kind of spread out there, because a lot of people are suffering with some pretty extreme, like beyond like seasonal or mental health related depression. It could just be like situational depression, and in scenarios like that, like what better time than like hearing a story where somebody else has experienced kind of what you're going through. And so I think that's a really good angle too. So I'm gonna absorb all of that.
I have a question, Josh. So what because I've never worked with a lit agent, but is their job stop once they've got you a publisher, or do they help with some of this marketing too? How does that work?
So a literary agent's primary job is to get you book contracts and to kind of guide you in building your career. But they are not a publicist. So it's kind of a difference. Publicists,
do they work with public? Because I mean, with that, I assume that's something that they don't take. Publicists probably don't take a cut. They probably have.
Yeah, I mean, my lit agent recommended a publicist, but the problem is publicists are really expensive.
Yeah. That's
so
what
when
I said.
Like a price tag for like a low price publicist, I was like, I might have to do my own rep game.
Yeah, where an agent would take a percentage. So if they don't perform, then they don't get anything. Whereas a publicist, you probably have to pay up front, right?
Yeah. Like, so a literary agent just gets a cut of your book. So it's like, if you get a crazy, book deal, like they get a very, very small percentage of the pie. And so they're incentivized to try to get you the best deal they can, and the best, best publisher they can, and stuff like that.
So I mean, that's a publicist. But what about hiring a digital assistant? Because they're more task based. Yeah. So you hire a digital assistant and say, I want you to locate as many of these things as you possibly can. Locate these type of journalists, for example, and I will give you $5 per journalist that you can find where they've written 2 or more articles about this. And then, it might cost you $100 to find 20 journalists, but that's where your time is going to get eaten up. And I feel like, being able to source that type of thing is probably the time consuming part.
Yeah.
That I would also read. There's a way to do this. Let me think. There's a way to reverse engineer educational papers. So if somebody's written an academic paper, you source the study or studies that they wrote that paper on. And what that does is that pushes you to the original study. And then from that study, you branch out to whoever has used that study in a paper or an article. And so you start somewhere, go to the source, and then from the source splinter. What that will do is, because what they're finding, and this is actually a huge problem beside the point, but it's a huge problem that we have where people will take a single study and there will be thousands of articles written about it where people draw conclusions that they probably shouldn't draw from the study.
Like a lot of them have no idea how to read a graph is what I've found out in the last year.
Right. And so, it's like recently there was maybe it's not recently anymore, but recently there was a study, an experiment done where they saw this particular type of quantum particle do something that it shouldn't have done. And every article that was written about it was wrong. So the people in the study were like, that's not what it's saying. But like it proliferated because one person said that, and then so everybody's looking for something to say that's interesting. And so there's all of a sudden hundreds of articles out there that were claiming that scientists discovered a parallel dimension. But that's not what the people who did the study came to the conclusion of. Anyway, long story, I'm getting off topic. Long story short, you can find somebody who references a study that's about a topic that you've been interested in. Maybe there's somebody out there that's done a study on reading or reading comics and mental health, and how there's some sort of correlation between those things. Find the original source of that, and then splinter out from that on who's written on that topic. And each one of those journalists that's written on that topic is a lead that would be interested in your thing because they're interested in something that proves that your thing is good.
I like it. That's a really good idea.
There was a comment by Holly says booktubers might be an option too. So I don't know too many booktubers, but that sounds like something you definitely should look into.
Yeah,
I mean, huge audiences, some of those guys.
Yeah, for sure. Well, I mean, if I could get like John Green to name drop or something, then of course I would do well. But it's not a bad idea. I also I am like hopeful about it. And the weird thing is, like, the nice thing is because it's an indie and because this is a book I've invested a lot of time in, it's not like I have to hit it all in a window of a month. Which is pretty much the window I'll have before pre-order, possibly less than a month once I get that info. So a lot of this may not be possible within like a month, but like as a long game strategy, it's not a bad idea. And honestly, if I can just target maybe I start by targeting immediately like the comic sources, which is not going to be massively long. It wasn't like 10 years ago. It's not. I can't imagine it being much crazier now. Maybe branch out a little bit to geek culture, and then target mental health awareness. I think that's actually a really good direction. And what you're talking about, Cory, actually, that could be like a real short-term and long-term gain in the sense of like getting some legs on this thing. That's a really good angle. That kind of opened my mind to like a much bigger marketing strategy that I can employ like for probably like years on this thing, which I think is actually pretty good. I like the idea.
That just came to mind I used to do this whenever I would launch a new ukulele line or a new guitar line. Is that, and this would take a little bit of money, but not necessarily a lot of money. Create really interesting point of purchase displays for the product. And so you could go and you could do, bookstores and stuff, and then say, hey, if you guys are interested, I'll ship you a free point of purchase display. Do it like a fold out, so that it's like a pop-up display, and have it. I mean, be crazy. You might have to hand make them. But I mean, die cuts are no longer super expensive. You can get die cuts done. You know this better than I do. You can get die cuts done nowadays on paper way easier than you used to. I mean, it was just 5 or 6 years ago that they're still making them with a guy with a mallet pounding it into wood, and nowadays it's just a knife that just cuts around it really fast.
You know what? I'm glad you mentioned that, because weirdly enough, Chris Ware, like early on with Acme Novelty Library, did these immaculate point of purchase displays for like local comic shops in Chicago. And so like, I think Quimby's might still have some of the ones that he made for them. But I mean, they're insane. Like they're like, like a conveyor belt that's it's illustrated conveyor belt, like being run by like his cartoon, his like kind of generic Superman parody, and it's like wheeling out all the comics on this beautiful display. And I mean, of course that's going to help move your product too. I
mean, point of purchase displays, there's not that many mechanisms to them. You know what I mean? Like it's either going to be like a loose spring that just moves with the air movement, or you're going to have some sort of rotating system, something that slowly rotates, attach a couple gears to it, and it'll do stuff. But even even if it's just
the cardboard ones,
just something that pops up and looks nice.
Yeah, I think the idea of having a display like that's pretty smart too, because like comic shops are usually pretty ignored when it comes to I think the owner of Alterna Comics, when we had him on here, was he talked about this, but it's like the idea that like Pepsi, when they go to like an AM/PM to carry their product, they give them a beautiful point of purchase display. They serve them. They're kind of like serving their retailers. And yet like comic companies like don't really do that. They don't do that as often. So like you don't have like Marvel coming and visiting comic shops as often as like a lot of vendors would visit stores. And so that's a really smart idea, because if you give them that thing, they're more incentivized to also give it a really good spot in the store, which is pretty smart. Right. So I like that as well, because that both serves the retailer and you, because if it's in a better place in the store, it's definitely going to sell better than if it's just like another book on this long shelf, especially, it's an oversized graphic novel. So it's not going to be long boxed, but it likely will be like that on a shelf full of a bunch of books, which is, so if you can get them to turn it this way, that's got a lot more sales potential already. And so I like that idea. And I should think about and consider that and see if there's a way to make that.
Another thing I've seen people,
key stores,
Another thing I've seen people do is like bookshelf filler. It's a box that's the size of the thing, but it makes it look like they're much more stocked than they are, because a lot of bookstores right now are running pretty lean because the customer base has been locked at home. And so like a little box that's the same size and shape of yours, that makes it look like they've got 15 copies when they've got 3. That'll make it so that they'll face it out rather than line it up in a bunch. And then I would also look at window clings, static window clings for the inside of the store front. And then I would look up signage. So stuff that could be hung above from the ceiling that points down at where your book is. Trying to think of other things. And then anything useful. So anything that could be used later as a feature. I noticed this with indie stores. is like if you give them something and it has your logo or your whatever on it, they will still use it if they can hang something on it or if it can display other things or whatever. Sometimes that's really frustrating. Like I would build this incredible wooden tree that held ukuleles, and then they'd put my competitors' ukuleles on it. I'm like, well, thank you, I guess.
Yeah, and I mean, I do like that idea for retail. It's just it's like one of the bummers about retail right now is even thinking about how to approach that. Like, even thinking about like signings, which is a pretty fair method for like getting a store to order your books and also getting some traffic in the store. And it's kind of a win-win at its best case scenario. And like, how do you even navigate store signings now? Like, are people even going into major stores? I do think, I don't know. It was encouraging. Like Scott, you were saying, like, the local comic shop in Surprise is still kind of rocking.
They are, but as far as they don't really do a whole lot of independent comics. Unfortunately, they're pretty much big too. I mean, they carry my stuff probably just because I'm local.
Yeah.
I just don't know, but going back to like the displays and stuff, you're talking about the die cuts, but even like the like the crickets and things like that, and there's some of them that can cut cardboard. I don't know if Holly's in the chat. I don't know if she still does this, but at one point she was doing, because she's got the laser cutter. At one point she was taking custom orders. I don't know if she's still doing that. Maybe Holly, if you are, you can let us know in the chat. But if she isn't, then I mean, just a lot of like Cory was saying, a lot of this stuff is getting cheaper, and the process to make these things are getting a lot more affordable.
Scott, that's a really interesting idea, because like you don't want to do like a slipcase because it's not a hardcover, but you could do like a cardstock slipcase, and you could custom design it for like Midtown Comics always orders like custom run covers for comics, and so you could like custom design this like slipcover for your book that's only for Midtown. It's only for whatever. Like pick like the 5 biggest comic book shops in the U.S. or something, and just offer like, hey, if I drew.
Yeah, I was gonna say you could do a sketch on it
for you. Would you guys put this in your store?
Yeah, and I definitely need to do that. I know like there's a really good local shop. There's a couple of really good kind of shops in the LA area and stuff. And then a little outside of LA that I definitely plan to reach out to. Like one of the main ones I want to hit up is the Comic Bug, because the owner's really cool and nice and kind of has been proven to be indie friendly, to pretty much everyone within like, a mile of Southern California. Anybody who's in SoCal, it's a pretty good shop for that. So, and definitely reaching out to like bigger shops in Chicago and New York and like, actually in Jeff Lafferty's neck of the woods too. Colorado is a big comic town. Denver, so like kind of reaching out to those shops and strategizing and stuff like that is not a bad idea. Offering like, custom stuff. I like that. I like that idea. I also like Holly did mention, which is kind of a no-brainer, but it may not be a bad idea for me to make some posters. I mean, Cat Print does some pretty nice posters and they're easy to ship, and like you can have them on offer.
Order through Cat Print, order through my. Well, it doesn't matter. I was going to say order through my link on my website, but I've got so many points ranked up over there that anytime I go to print something, I can probably get it. So you probably don't need to do that.
Yeah, it's too bad I don't have unlimited resources, because I would probably just hire Cory to do all this for me. But it's But one thing I like too is like I think collectively too. I know it seems silly, but I think collectively just the strategy of reaching out to Facebook and having people share the word with their local shops is probably going to be the most effective for like organic growth in the sense of just getting comic shops to order. Because like even if I call a shop, if I offer like specials or anything like that, that's not going to go as far as like somebody who has a pull list with the store coming in and saying, hey, this comic's great, you got to order copies of it. Like that's the kind of thing that kind of has a lot more legs. But I do, man, these are so many good strategies. The thing that bums me out, like this is the strategy I really wanted to do. I'm going to have to wait until there's a vaccine that's widely accepted by people, because ideally what I wanted to do was when the book was out, basically just spend every weekend traveling to different comic shops and selling the books like in person. The nice thing about this is, at least in this case, you know, like it'll have Ingram attached to it, so it will be orderable by most stores. But I do need to reshift and kind of think of ways to reach out to these stores. And like the neat thing is, being in California, offering in person is something I can pretty much do all the way up to like NorCal. And even with NorCal, with enough planning and time, I could probably do that too. The only downside is, how do you even navigate in person now? Like that's the part that's mystifying. I mean, Scott, you were talking about with the local shop. Like, are they even doing? You were saying they are doing in store, but you're kind of like not hip to the doing in store right now.
Yeah, I mean, I'm kind of.
Oh, go ahead.
I was going to say I'm a little hesitant, but they had Ray Park come in and they had a pretty decent line out, out, not inside, obviously outside, and then they would bring people in as when they had room and stuff, and they said anytime I want to come in and do a signing. So I mean, they want to get stuff going like that, obviously. So if you were comfortable with it, and obviously you have to wear a mask and do all that kind of stuff.
Yeah, and I'm wondering how many shops must be doing that, because comic stores have been suffering for far longer than the COVID thing, and one of the main ways that comic shops stay around and stay afloat is like in-person events. And so like having that taken out, like I'd imagine most stores must be coming up with like kind of COVID safe ways to do in-store signings. So maybe that isn't off the table. And then that's just more, I guess, maybe for me to like consider whether that's a risk I want.
Yeah, and the thing is, I mean, I can do it because I have a good rapport with my local comic shop, but obviously, they wouldn't if they didn't know me already or whatever. They might, because they can build a event around it. Even if I'm not like a huge well-known person, but obviously they'd rather have somebody like a Ray Park or somebody come in and do a signing.
Yeah. And I mean, in the past, like the best signings you can kind of be a part of are ones that attach like big and small names. So it kind of benefits everybody because it kind of packs the event, but also like helps, get more attendance. Like, I definitely, it's funny. I had almost taken that off as an option off the table, but maybe that's not. I mean, I'd imagine a lot of these establishments must be trying to have some kind of in-person presence.
Yeah, and like you said, I mean, you're going to continue to promote this book. I mean, it's not a floppy. It's not a So I mean, it's something that you can continue to promote. So when things get a little better, hopefully, you can start doing that.
Yeah, and that's one of the advantages too of it being a graphic novel in length is even if I like order these direct from the publisher and then I'm selling them, it's still a much bigger margin of profit than I would get from selling floppies, in person. Because if I did like an in-store signing, like and I sold like 5 copies of my book in an hour or like 2 hours, like that's not as bad as like 5 copies of a $2 book that I'm making 10 cents on or 20 cents on, so like I do think the margins might be better. What's weird, Scott, just on another note, is the comic books that you have through Amazon, like the kind of worksheets for the for one-on-one classes. Have you thought about like kind of doing an event like that for your local shop?
Well, I would, yeah. If I do another thing, I mentioned that, I mentioned that I could get them some of those books, but I'm not sure. I asked how many people they have creating, which they might not, but like, see if and this isn't something they could do right now, I don't think, because COVID, but they used to have like drawing events where they get a bunch of people in, kids and things, and they'd have a draw thing. That's something I could definitely sell a lot of those books at. So that would be just a matter of me ordering a lot of, artist copies, and then sell them in person. So I'm definitely, when I get to a point where I can do that, I'm definitely going to get some more of those and sell those in person too. So.
All right. So, one last just kind of quandary on this, just kind of spaghetti at the wall thing. Squatchy points out, he said there's a lot of stores doing the signings and a lot of podcasts. Yeah, for sure. So that's a lot of research and stuff I need to do. Squatchy, if you have any recommendations, man, hit me up on Facebook and message a crap load of them to me, because I'm going to be doing that research. One question for you guys, like, so the release date is the 14th. I still don't have pre-order information. So, and you guys know this, it's like part of effective marketing is like thinking about long-term and short-term and kind of what your first step should be, and prioritizing. So it's like, what would you prioritize of all the things we've kind of gone over for like a first attack? Because I'm basically going to have a few weeks to do it. I don't know if that makes sense.
I mean, I don't know about Cory. I would get ahead on the stuff Cory was talking about as far as like the press releases and things like that, because it may take a little while for you to hear back or whatever. Once you get, I think you probably need you might not even need that. Can you get more of those copies or digital copies that you can send to people for promotion or?
For the comic, yeah, I'm planning on trying to get a hold of an ebook, and if not, like just kind of making my own version for press use only. For physical books, I'm gonna guess, given the size of the publisher, they probably won't want to do that unless they're sending out their own for press releases.
Right.
So that's definitely something I need to kind of gather first. I like the idea of a link though that has like a pre-written press release, which actually wouldn't be like, okay, that would be a headache and a crazy amount of work, except that I've already made a pitch packet. And so when you make a proposal for publishers for a lit agent, it basically is a press release. And so the nice thing is by just rewording that a little bit, I don't think I'd have to do a mass amount of legwork to kind of get it formatted into a press release. I do like the idea too, Cory, that you were mentioning of not only kind of having the body copy, but also having like versions with different photos and layouts, almost like you've done the article for them. And I think that's a really good idea too. And that's something that might take a little bit longer to compile, because you'd want it to have art, but you'd also want it to have like pictures of the artist, and I like the idea of the video component to it too.
So the way that I would do that is I wouldn't lay the article out for them.
Yeah.
But I would have a folder that says images from the book, and I'd have a folder, and so you give them the assets to lay it out.
Mm-hmm. And that's also smart too, right? Because even if they say like read the entire book, which is pretty unlikely if they're writing a on a blog or a website's like deadlines. So that's also smart, because even on the off chance that they did, they might pick like the worst page to feature. And so it's a way for you to kind of curate what they would show, which I think is smart too.
Yeah. And then something I didn't bring up, I would find influencers on Twitter that talk about books. I mean, go after Neil Gaiman. I mean, he retweets stuff like this all the time, and every time he does, it goes nuts.
Yeah.
And so, people like that are kind of in that space where readers follow them. That would be interesting. And Chris K is saying, make it easy for promo starting at the local level, local TV too. And that's what I was saying with like the B-roll. So like sit down as if you are being interviewed by that person. This is a trick that I don't know a lot of people outside of PR that know, is you answer questions as if they're asking you questions. A lot of the interviews that you'll see on the news aren't happening. The person will pretend to ask a question that they already have a pre-recorded answer to, and then they cut to you answering that question to the camera as if you had just asked that question.
So Josh, I was just thinking, you on your website, you've got, or it's a YouTube, but you've got that video that you did where you kind of read like the first chapter or whatever.
Yeah.
You could probably send that out, because some people like myself, usually I prefer like video. Some people might do that, give it as an option, say, here's a little video trailer type of the book, and in addition to a copy of the book.
That's definitely one I'm going to be doing because I can do it better now. So I do plan on doing a really good trailer for it. And that's not a bad idea. Maybe I could actually implement a little bit of what you're talking about, Cory, into the trailer, where it could be me talking about the book and then cutting to sections of the book. And instead of like a recap of an entire chapter, more of like a trailer type of thing where it's like the back copy of the book. So it's giving you a little snippet of the plot.
Yeah.
And also like a little bit of interaction. And actually that might be a good way to kind of browse through my old YouTube content and pull some of the better, like, sped up shots of me like drawing and stuff.
Yeah, keep it short. I mean, because you were talking originally about doing it like a Kickstarter, and that's one of the main things they say when you're doing a Kickstarter. You got to have a video, so keep it a minute or a couple minutes, And yeah, I definitely would do that.
Yeah, I like that. I like the idea of the interview. I really do need to like craft a press release and stuff like that too. So I got work ahead of me, and some of it may not be achievable in the time frame, but I'm gonna. I think I've got a pretty good window on like things that can be done.
Yeah, and what Cory was talking about when you write the press, basically, I mean the same thing with the with the interviews where you're actually doing all the work for them. I mean, these places love that, because I've done interviews like local magazines. I mean, in a lot of these magazines, there's one here. Oh, I think they have it in other cities. They probably have it in some of the cities in California too. But it's called, I forgot what it's called. Is it Venture or some Voyager, Phoenix, and different cities? I forgot what it was. I can look it up. But they just basically, it's just where they what do they call it? Where they aggregate content, like. So they'll do, they basically don't have to write anything. They say, we want to promote what you're doing and everything. Here's a questionnaire, you fill it out and you submit it, and then they just publish that. So they're not doing any work. You're doing all the work. Yeah. But you're getting hopefully some promotion out of it. So,
Yeah, I noticed that. So this is years ago, but like with local papers, and this is definitely something like the first thing that I think. So what I'm gathering from this is like the first thing I need to do is collect all this content and and get a shareable link to it. But I mean, I definitely think the first media I'm going to be reaching out to is going to be local papers in Portland, in Long Beach, and in the Antelope Valley, because those are the most likely to get press. Doing the angle of like local does whatever, right? Like, because they love that kind of story. And whatever local papers still survive.
Does it? Do you reference? I can't remember. Do you reference Portland in the book? You were living there at the time, right?
Yeah. I mean, it takes place in Portland. It has like iconic signs and all sorts of Portland about it. And the neat thing about Portland is it's a very proud city of itself. And so, like, I think the fact that it's got that, and then I'm not sure if some of the people who used to write about me in Oregon are still there, but if they're still writing, like, I think I might have pretty good traction with that. But what I will say is, like, the Oregonian, like which is like one of the papers up there, like did exactly what you were saying, Scott, where it's like I wrote a press release on the back of a card that was like a really nicely written article, and even made comparisons with me with some of my favorite artists. And then they wrote it and they were like, his art style is like this. And then it's not even my name saying it. It's their name saying what I told them to say.
Right.
And so suddenly I'm getting compared to like my heroes in an article. And it's all because I put that in my own article that I sent to them. And then they just kind of reprinted and put their name on it. And that's ideal. That's kind of like, I mean, it's even better if they decide to do a feature or something like that. But like if you can kind of control the narrative and say what you want to say about the book and have it published in, with the reach of local news, like that's a really good angle. So that's one place I want to try. Pretty hard to do. And like I said, all of this is like probably realistically going to be a many years long project, but in the short run, I think this has helped because it's making me realize like I need to gather together, particularly like the like the press release information, put it together, have different samples from the book, like kind of in a downloadable format from a link. And also have like in that also like author photos and stuff like that would be nice for an article. And then I think gathering like a collected video trailer would be good. That's a little better edited than the sample chapter. So that's good. And then I think like actually the idea of like kind of a fake interview where you're kind of answering questions is really brilliant too, Cory. I like that. And then I think the organic stuff is just kind of a no-brainer, and I'll obviously be doing that too. And also I'm going to be reaching out to a lot of people in the next month or two, just asking for what contacts they have, what's their local paper, like what comic-friendly sites do they listen to and check out and read, and kind of do my own research on that as well. I definitely want to reach out to Heidi McDonald too, if she's still writing for the Comics Beat. I don't know if that's still around, but that would be good too, because that got a lot of traction back in the day. So who knows? It's kind of intimidating, but the thing I like about marketing and the thing I love about this kind of thing, it's weird. Marketing for yourself can almost be harder because like when you're marketing for a business, there's usually a budget. When you're marketing for yourself, obviously, like a lot of the time, the budget is not it's a lot more tight and stringent than it would be for a business. So that'll be an interesting challenge. But I do think this might come down to just that thing I was telling you, Cory, with the animations. There was a while ago where you were like having trouble with some animation stuff, and I was like, just be your own art director. And I think this might be one of those scenarios where it's like, now I actually have to be my own marketing company.
Yeah.
Cory, maybe I can just have you keep me in line during the art checks too, just to be like, dude, where are you at on that? Are you doing this thing? Just bug me.
Yeah, I mean, I would triage. I'd probably what I would do is look at the transcript of this YouTube video.
Yeah.
And then just go through and jot down, a bullet point of every single thing that the three of us said. And then I would go through and I would rank everything in a triage of like low hanging fruit. So I'd probably put two rank. I would do this in a spreadsheet because I'm a weirdo, but I'd have two columns, and one column would be like the possible effectiveness of this, like the reach or the power of it. And then the other column would be the ease of it. And then rank those from like 1 to 3, right? And then a third column, add those ranks up, and anything that's going to rank high on ease and high on effectiveness, that becomes your number one priority. So you just sort by that third column, and it'll automatically tell you what you should do. If it's easy and has the possibility of being really effective, it's going to be really high on that list. If it's hard and effective, it'll be mid-range on that list. And if it's less likely to be super effective and difficult, it'll be really low on that list. And then I would just chop off the bottom half of that list because it's pointless, and then focus and just go from 1 all the way down.
I like it. And I think that'll help have a better idea of like a good starting point too. But I definitely, what I'm gathering from this is like, I need that press release. I should probably have that video and have a link and photos and stuff. So that's definitely a starting place regardless, kind of before kind of moving on anything, and getting the ebook would be good, or just kind of creating my own. So those are all like really good starting points. And then I think there's a billion beautiful jumping points that I like that idea of also making a list and prioritizing it, ranking it in that way. I think that's actually pretty brilliant, dude. Cool. Sorry for dominating the whole.
That's what this is for. Yeah, that's what this is for.
Yeah.
I think a lot of people are going to get value out of this too, because a lot of people can take some of these things that we're talking about and apply it to whatever their own books are.
Yeah, I was going to say the same thing. I think anything that we talked about today is basically you take the theory behind why we said it and apply it to your thing. So maybe not everybody's stuff is mental health awareness, but like you figure out that category and you change the category of what all three of us said, and then you've got all those ideas.
Yeah, and another thing that I think will be helpful in this too is like I need to also go back to my proposal that I spent a ton of time and focus on, and kind of look at some of the marketing ideas in there too, and kind of refresh my mind, because it's very easy to kind of lose track of what you can kind of get done, or to get frozen. It's actually just like starting a comic or starting a story. You can get it frozen in that, like, well, I need to get the perfect story, or I need to get the perfect thing, and then end up not getting anything done at all, rather than just starting on one and realizing, like, you know, you have a whole lifetime to kind of make all kinds of stories, you know, like, and so similarly, it's like, you know, I think you can end up kind of frozen in like there's so much, what can I do? Kind of state, instead of just kind of pausing and like Cory, like you were recommending, like, you know, kind of really prioritizing and figuring out like what your first method of attack is. And I can also just say, like, a lot of this is really great advice, and I've seen it happen in my own life and in other people's careers and stuff too, where it's like, it seems silly, like the whole press release thing, and it seems kind of gimmicky, but I've literally lived through it working and wound up in papers and magazines because of it. So it's like it can be a really useful tool. Hopefully,
useful. I was going to say there's a comment from Gary. I don't know, Gary. I would bite the bullet on that and do it. I mean, once we're, you know, in the position where we can do that, because when you market to comic book people, it's not like marketing to, you know, because if you go to those UFO conventions or whatever, you're going to be the only one, probably, or one of the only people with a comic book. So I think you could clean up way more than you could at a comic convention.
Yeah, I was going to say, I think fans of like aliens, and also like like people who play at conspiracy, I think would be really into these books, because they're so well crafted, and you treat the subject matter with such like reverence. I mean, there's humor, but it's like, it's just done in a very unique way. I would definitely recommend that. So cool.
I feel personally attacked by all of these good ideas, since I have a book that's been sitting unpromoted forever.
Well, maybe we can play at promotion at the same time. I mean, I think I definitely think, Cory, you should get that book out. But yeah.
I know. I keep toying with the idea of like, maybe I just land a big freelance client, and then instead of saving that money, I take the whole chunk and I offer it as a bounty and just say, whoever wants to go and do all of these things, make this happen, I will give you this chunk of money. Because I hate this. I'm good at strategizing this stuff.
Yeah.
I absolutely hate doing it. I can't even describe how intensely I dislike doing everything that I said tonight.
Yeah, me too. I will say like that will be the big barrier is like, and we've talked about this, Cory, but it's like one of the hurdles that we all have to overcome, and I definitely do. And like I'm hoping like conversations like this help me do this. Is like I need to be a better marketer for myself. Like I find it a lot easier to do this if I'm doing it for a paycheck and for another company. But for myself, it becomes like really nightmarish. And I have to say, even on the publicist end, like I did consider it. You know, it's just during COVID with all this financial uncertainty just in the world, it just didn't seem like a good time to take a giant risk, financial risk that might like, you know, jeopardize my son's future.
Okay, Gary is summing this up correctly for me. Like those are great ideas, and oy vey.
Yeah, that's how I felt this whole conversation. But also, I feel motivated, and like I said, I've seen it work. I mean, when it's a long time ago, but when I got the Xeric, like a good portion of that Xeric went to promoting and marketing. And I was just a kid in an apartment, like a single bedroom apartment in the ghetto of Long Beach. And the next thing you know, I was getting like news articles written about me as if I were some giant publisher. And it was the weirdest thing to me when it actually worked, because it just felt like such a risk to just go to this mailing house and just mail out thousands of these packets. And I'm like, well, there goes that money. And then the next thing you know, it actually like was like, oh, that's what publishers do. Oh, okay.
Yeah, I mean, if anybody is interested in what this is called, most of what we talked about tonight is called earned media.
Yeah.
That's the PR term, is you're looking for earned media. And so if you want to research people who actually know what they're talking about and not me, go look at earned media strategies. Because that is PR. I mean, I don't think I'll get in trouble by saying this. I have a strongly held opinion that there's very little difference between PR agencies and advertising agencies nowadays. And a lot of the difference is just the number of graphic designers that they have working for them. But one of the major differences that still debunks that opinion of mine is whether they're going for paid media buys or whether they're going for earned media. And if you're a cartoonist, you probably want to get as much earned media as possible, because you don't have, $5,000 to do a bunch of paid ads. We haven't mentioned this before, but I'd throw a couple $100 at paid ads. Very strategic. I'd do a 15-second, so that it's non-skippable, do a 15-second video that you can put in front of anybody on YouTube that's talking about this type of thing. And then I would also do some very targeted, segmented ads on Instagram and Facebook.
Sorry, I just have to humble brag here with something Chris called out in the chats. So Art Spiegelman, I met him at APE, and I gave him a copy of my comic because it was my first convention that I was tabling at, and that was after this thing where I was talking about, where I sent out all these things in the mail, and he was like, "Yeah, I've seen this. I've heard of this. This is a pretty good book. Like, it looks pretty cool. Thank you." And I was like, how the hell have you? And then I realized, like, it's because the comic bubble is really small, right?
Right.
And then there's only so many media sources. So like the second you get like that's actually another place I totally forgot to mention, but it's like I need to harp on the Comics Journal. Even if they give a bad review, I don't care. But just to get them to even mention it would be a good thing, because like most cartoonists read the Cartoonist Journal. And so it's like, if I can get through that barricade, you get through one or two of those barriers, and it's weird, but it can work. And like Chris was saying, it was weird because he had seen my book, and like I just self-published it. So so it's like it's possible. It's just it's also scary when it's been that long since I've had to like do that kind of attack again. So, and it's a different media landscape. So I think what like a lot of these strategies, especially because Cory, you kind of are like downplaying it a bit, but it's like, dude, you're way more of a professional in this area than I have ever been, and honestly teach a good chunk of this. So,
and fled from it at great speed. The first opportunity that I had.
but the point being, like, I appreciate the wisdom, because I think it's helpful, and it's going to help me navigate also this kind of newer era, because it's a little different of a game. As well as just hopefully my friends will equally bother press and comic shops and all that, so that we can get this thing succeeding. Yeah. Cool. So I almost forgot, like I'm running this thing. So we're at like an hour 25. Is there anything you guys felt like we didn't hit or touch on, like in this convo?
I will give people money to not have to do any of this stuff. That's what I want to touch on. I have a book. I think it's a good book. And if anybody's interested, I hate doing this, but yeah, I want to get that out there. Anyway, if anybody wants to pitch me on helping me out, I will be finishing a freelance gig before the end of the year where I'd have a little bit of money set aside. Not a lot, but a little bit. So if somebody's interested in trying, I would. I'm a little concerned saying that on the internet out loud right now, but why not? Let's try it. Let's see. But yeah. No, yeah, I think that's good. I think we covered a lot of different avenues.
Yeah,
I wouldn't discount paid media. I wouldn't discount a paid ads campaign, a really small one.
Yeah.
Chris, hit me up with an email or something. I'll send you a copy of it. The book's it's called Tongue Cut Sparrow. It's based on the Japanese fairy tale.
Yeah, and actually, oddly enough, Chris would be the guy to hire. Weirdly enough, like for anything like that, like Chris is so good at promotion, and I can just say this, like he's that guy at a convention that has like a massive line, and there's like a celebrity next to him with like no one, and it's like he's just like he's got like a real gift for just kind of like doing it, and incredible work too. So anyhow, cool. So yeah, I love that. I love that we had a little active chat, and I appreciate everybody in the chat giving in and stuff too. And it was fun to be able to like finally show you guys a little sneak peek of his book, which will be out in like a month. So pretty exciting.
It's cool, man. I mean, you did it. This is we've been talking. I mean, okay, so a little bit of history. I was kind of just a random guest on Artcasters a few times, and after one of the times, we were just up late, and you and I were both kind of in a slump, and you're like, we should just make a show where we get together and we just like talk through this thing, because I've got forever until I'm done with this book, and now 256 episodes later, 48-hour art check, you're done. It's got a publisher, and we did it. This is like it. I just realized this is like the full circle. We're on Artcasters, having completed several hundred episodes of you working on this book.
Yeah.
And now you're marketing it. That is cool, man.
Yeah, it's cool to get there. I'm hoping the next time goes quicker. I even mentioned this on Facebook too. I posted a picture from like an art show that I did with the first chapter of this for grad school. And I'm like posing in front of the cover page in a gallery, and it's like 8 years ago. And I was like, comics take forever, man. Like, they just take forever. But I do think, like, by re-strategizing and stuff, I should add that to this too, is like, on top of all this marketing, I also really want to stay on top of book 2 so that it just takes less time. And I look at people in our community, like Cory, like how quick you knocked out that kid's book was super inspiring. Gary, like, I don't know how the hell I'm still impressed with this book, dude. It's like, it's unbelievable how quickly, and I know that that's not quick. Like, I know that's a lot of unseen time. Some of it seen on his YouTube channel, but just a lot of time behind the artboard, you know, just drawing a crap load. So that kind of stuff inspires me. Scott constantly putting out like 5 books a week on Amazon. All of that like really inspires me and helps me to want to get quicker and more efficient. And you guys were a big part of this thing getting done too, because it's like a big support system that we've built, I think, in a real cool little community to like encourage everybody to have creative output. I think that's important, man, because otherwise you end up stuck with muggles. And when you see people doing magic, it's hard to like to forget that you're a part of it, you know. So, all right. Thanks to everybody who joined us. Thanks, Cory, for coming on. I appreciate it, buddy. I wanted to share that moment with you because, yeah, like I feel like this is kind of our wheelhouse. So, and then we will see you guys next week. Oh, and Cory, right before we go, why don't you? I forgot we usually do this for everybody, so we'll do this for everybody. But Cory, why don't you let everybody know where to find you before we take off, and also where they can check out that awesome Ink Pulp audio interview you got coming on.
Yeah, so go to corykerr.com/online, and I've got a link to that show that's happening tomorrow at 2:30 p.m. Mountain Time. And it'd be cool if people could show up because I'd like it to be a really active chat. I want it to be really beneficial because this is something that I want to start doing a little bit more, is interviewing professional people with an audience and trying to help them out and getting the word out on their stuff, but also it helps me out. And so, but this guy, he's a cool dude, and he's kind of a hero of mine, artistic and just like in his vulnerability. So anyway, Sean Crystal, Ink Pulp, he's gonna be on the show. I've got a little thing, so for those people that weren't there before, so go to that link, and then you'll see this image, and then you can click on that and just set a little reminder on YouTube. I have a guess that is really just a theory that the more people that click that reminder thing, the more likely YouTube is to show that to more people when it goes live. Because I'm learning a little bit more about certain types of algorithms and things. And I just read, and this makes a lot of sense, like on Instagram, when somebody bookmarks or saves your thing, it's like a super like. So it's weighted heavily towards saves. Anyway, so stuff like that. My guess is that YouTube does something similar. So anyway, if you can make it, that would be cool. And I will try to get any questions that you guys put in the chats asked. But I mean, he's worked for Marvel, DC, Oni, everybody. He's done all kinds of different stuff, and he's launching a thing. So
yeah, beautiful inks too. Like he literally is one of the best inkers.
Yeah, I mean, he's a dry brush master. I mean, the guy's phenomenal at that. So
cool. All right, you guys know where to find me. I've talked plenty about it, but if you want to keep in tune with the information on Two Stories Book 1, keep checking out quarterlystories.com, and you can also find my illustration work and news and stuff like that on joshforkimball.com. And then you're on my channel, so if you haven't yet, hit like, hit subscribe, and hit that bell. And then Scott, where can everybody get a hold of your books? And also, how do they keep track of this crazy show that bounces from channel to channel?
Yeah, so like I said, my books, I'll hold a couple of them up again. Blank comic book pages. I've got thumbnail pages. I've got like character design model sheets, all kinds of things that you can use to help create comics. If you just go to circworks.com, there's a link, and that'll take you to my, they're not on my online store, but that'll take you to my Amazon store where those are. And of course, with Amazon, if you got Amazon Prime, it's free shipping, so you can get them pretty cheap, you know. So definitely check those out. Make great stocking stuffers. Holiday season's coming up. I also have my YouTube channel where I've got Making Comics 101. If you want to learn how to make comics, that'll tell you pretty much everything you need to know. And like Josh said, we do this show, the Artcasters, usually every single week, usually on a Thursday. It's possible it could be on a different day. And the other thing is that it switches back and forth from Josh's channel to my channel. So that can be a little confusing. But if you don't want to be confused, the easiest way to be alerted when there's a new show, what channel it's going to be on, what day, all that stuff is to join our mailing list. We don't spam you or anything like that. Usually about 30 minutes ahead of the show, we will send out an email. You can just click on that, and then you will be in the know. So check that out. There's a link in the description of this video.
Love it. All right. And we will see you guys next week. Bye.